So last Thursday, the 12th of November of 2020, I released a video wherein I challenged the governor of Minnesota to come and stop me from having a family gathering or a gathering of any kind in my home of more than 10 people or consisting of 3 households or more. And that video has done well. And one of the things that I pointed out in that video was the surreptitious way in which the governor had allowed for a back door into enforcing his stay-at-home order, mostly by the curtailing of your constitutional liberties by allowing the attorney general, city attorneys, and county attorneys and others to investigate you for even threatening to violate his orders, to threaten to fail to comply, if you will. So in doing that, here's what I was looking at. In that video, I talked about this section right here, where it says, state and local licensing and regulatory entities that inspect businesses for compliance with rules and codes to protect the public are encouraged to assess regulated business compliance with this executive order and use existing enforcement tools to bring businesses into compliance. Okay, now that's a direct threat against businesses, and I know for a fact what they're doing with that because I have let's say a friendly acquaintance who owns a business here in Spring Valley who announced that he was going to be a constitutionally compliant business and not a COVID-19 restriction compliant business. And he was told by Representative Greg Davids of our district, our House district, there was nothing that he could do, that the governor would just beat him up, bully him into complying through existing statutory regulations. In other words, he will enforce this any unenforceable executive order by enforcing other things that are not related to the executive order. See, now this is important. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about the spinelessness of Representative Greg Davids. Quite frankly, he's one of the old guard. He is an old school Republican, not a constitutionally conservative Republican. I have no hope in ever seeing Greg Davids stand up for anything that would potentially threaten his position in the House of Representatives ever again. There was only a short brief span of time where Greg Davids wasn't in the House of Representatives in Minnesota since I've lived in this area. And quite frankly, I think it's time for someone who actually has a spine to stand up and take that nomination, or take the nomination of the party from Greg and go up there and do the work that people like Eric Lucero and Jeremy Munson are doing. So that being said, there's something else here that is even more chilling. And you're gonna say, why is that chilling? And here's why. If I can get it to highlight properly. I don't know why it's not highlighting properly. There we go. Nothing, are you ready? Nothing in this executive order is intended to encourage or allow law enforcement to transgress individual constitutional rights. That's a catch-all statement. That is not the governor saying he doesn't want people's constitutional rights violated or transgressed. He's saying he's not encouraging it. This is what ironically, this is what makes this unenforceable for the governor. Okay? The governor can enforce this, and he knows that. He also knows that the only way for him to enforce anything is to use law enforcement. And he also knows that law enforcement, by and large, in the state of Minnesota, is not going to enforce something that they know violates constitutional liberties, rights, individual constitutional liberties or rights. Most law enforcement, especially in the rocks and cows parts of Minnesota, aren't interested in becoming agents of a repressive, oppressive, regressionist, progressive leftist, Marxist man like Walz. They don't want to do that dirty work for him. And so what Walz has done is he has built up this fear, this threat aspect of this being a law that's enforceable, but then down below says nothing in this is intended to encourage or allow. This right here, people, is why you don't have to obey the governor. Ironically, it's also the means by which he is going to say, look, it wasn't our intent to transgress your constitutional rights as an individual. It was never encouraged that these things be taken away from you. But unfortunately, it happens. We can't do anything about it because, well, it was never our intent. Your intent doesn't matter, Governor. Your intent isn't what's important. Your intent is to remove constitutional liberties from people. But you're going to do it through the fear of compliance, which is why, for one, I'm not going to comply. You can't touch me. You can't make me wear a mask. You can't make me stay home. You can't make me have only 10 people in my house. And no decent, constitutionally minded law enforcement official in the state of Minnesota is going to become the masked police or the social gathering police or anything like that. Now, that doesn't mean it won't happen. But what the governor has done is he has set himself up to not be held accountable for it. He wants these things enforced. He puts out up to a $25,000 fee to be assessed against individuals who threaten to fail to comply. He puts out that any failure on the part of any individual to comply with any of his orders could be seen or is to be treated as a misdemeanor and is to be penalized with a $1,000 fine and is to be penalized with up to 90 days in jail. He wants this enforced, but he doesn't want to be on the hook for it. Do you see what he's doing? This is why it doesn't matter what he wants. This is why his order isn't important. Once again, I'm being safe. Look, my intent is not to turn this into some sort of civil war. My intent is to keep people from engaging in the foolishness that is complying with a man who is a double talk expert. He has people terrified of a virus. He has people terrified of violating his executive orders. While he has built into his executive orders the means by which he can say, I never intended for anybody's constitutional rights to be violated. That's the fault of the cops. Law enforcement did that. They did that. That's not my fault. Hold them accountable. But I said right here in my executive order, that was never my intent. Governor Walz, you intended this. You're a coward. You've built into your executive order the very means by which people are justified in disobeying it, not to mention the Constitution, while at the same time you are putting on the hook law enforcement who are going to be the ones responsible for enforcing it, and they'll be the ones who lose on both a professional and familial level, because any violation of a person's constitutional rights automatically strips any law enforcement officer or official of their immunity from lawsuits. I'm calling on every single law enforcement officer, every single law enforcement official in the state of Minnesota to actively look at the governor and say, we're not going to enforce any of this. Governor Walz is a coward, and he wants to use people like the men and women of law enforcement to take the heat for something that he knows he can't enforce. Well, he set them up to take the damage. Governor Walz is a disgusting Marxist shill who's pandering to a fear indoctrinated, incapacitated group of people out there, demanding that he protect them from all of these dangerous people out there who aren't listening to him, all the while knowing that he can't do it. Individual Americans, individual citizens of the state of Minnesota, stand up, do not comply, take off the mask, rip them off and throw them away. Host parties, 20, 30, 40, 50 people every time you get a chance in your house. Invite as many people from your neighborhood into your home as possible. Have them gather on your front yards. Make them, the state of Minnesota, make the governor be the one that enforces this. Demonstrate that they know they've lost this fight. Do not cower in fear. Sic Semper Tyrannis.